Welcome back to our channel. In this video, we are going to discuss about Azure Bastion. So Azure Bastion, in general, in many of the organization, they call it as jump server or jump host or terminal server, or even in the Windows part of the world, they also call it as remote desktop server. Right? When you want to take remote desktop of a server or for a particular device, you generally use these particular solution, the jump station or the bastion. So Microsoft has provided this particular Azure Bastion as a service. So this is platform as a service. So which means the underlying infrastructure and the operating system of the virtual machine is being managed by Microsoft. The operational overhead of maintaining the operating system or the licensing and the upgrades, updates, the backup of the virtual machine is being taken care by Microsoft Azure team. So this particular solution is an alternate to use any remote desktop clients. Maybe if you're logging into Windows, we generally use remote desktop client protocol. If it is Linux, we go for the SSH client. So both these tools are not necessary when you go for Azure Bastion. So we can also use the native client. I will also show you the demo on how to use the native client. But this Azure Bastion solution helps you to connect to your uh, important virtual machines using the internet connection. So directly you can log into the Azure portal, and from there you can use the Azure Bastion to connect the backend systems. So instead of opening the 3389 and the 22 port to the internet, what Bastion does is it just exposes only the 443 port, which is again a secure port on HTTP, right? So you are accessing the Azure portal using transport layer security and secure sockets layer. So whatever the connections and the data that we are accessing, it is very secure and seamless. Okay, so when you connect to Azure Bastion, one another important point is the backend systems doesn't need any public IP address. So from the Bastion, all these backend virtual machines can be accessed using the private IP address, and you don't need to install any agent or client in order to access these virtual machines using the Bastion. So this particular Azure Bastion, it is very much protecting your systems without exposing the RDP and SSH protocol. So these are all well-known and widely used protocols, right? The RDP and the SSH. So if you are exposing that to the internet, then generally we have the risk of brute force attack, which is kind of taken care using the Azure Bastion. So that's another a very important point. So Azure Bastion is a service where we deploy it in a hub VNet or in a specific subnet called Azure Bastion subnet. So in the Azure Bastion subnet, you generally have these virtual machines which are getting created to act as a bastion. So there are multiple licensing models or there are multiple tier that are available to choose within the bastion. So we have 4 different options: developer bastion, basic bastion, standard, and then the premium was recently added, and many new features has been added into the Azure Bastion recently. So they've added the session recording, they have added one more feature called custom port configuration, and they also provide you shareable links. So shareable links is available in the standard SKU as well, but then the session recording, which are some of the options which used to be part of your CyberArk or Citrix or other tools, where you have to pay a lot of amount to get the session recording done. And with the session recording, generally the troubleshooting is made simplified. So the operations team, when they want to have a session recording of what was done in the previous connection, so they can go through the session recording and then they can roll back what was done in the previous connection. So here also now with Azure Bastion, Microsoft has provided you the session recording. So similarly, like CyberArk and similar tools provides that option earlier. So we don't have to go for third-party tool anymore. We can use the Azure Bastion to use that session recording, and there are multiple other options which we are going to explore in details. Now, looking at the architecture, so generally the Azure Bastion need not be deployed in all the VNets. Instead, you can have it on your hub VNet, which is a demilitarized or the perimeter network VNet. So from where you can access all the backend virtual networks which are connected through peering or which you have direct connections enabled. So if you have a site-to-site VPN or if you have a private IP accessible from the particular Bastion VNet, you can access all the backend systems. So exposing the remote desktop protocol and SSH over the internet is not a best practice, is not desired. So this particular Azure Bastion provides that particular significant benefit by avoiding the threat surface through this particular protocol. So to contain this thread surface, you can also deploy this Bastion host, also known as the gem server. And this is mainly designed to withstand any kind of attacks. And you can also use these Azure Bastion. You can connect it from any browser, any web browser. You can use Edge or Google Chrome or many different HTML5 supported browsers are allowed. Now coming to the general architecture. So we access as a administrator, we access the Azure portal using 443, and from there we use that particular Bastion service. Again, that is being accessed using a 443 and SSL enabled connection. From there, from the hub VNet, you can access all the virtual machines that are residing on the hub VNet, as well as it can access all the virtual machines which are on your spoke VNet or in your workload VNet. So provided we have to have these VNet peering in place in order to access it. And from this particular hub VNet to backend subnets or the backend VNets, you can access all the systems using the private IP address. So that's the beauty of Azure Bastion. Okay, so this is very much simplified thing. If you're a customer and have just a single VNet, this is much more simplified and you can access it pretty much straightforward. So Azure Bastion, you need to create a separate subnet within the VNet that you want to use Azure Bastion, and you need to have a subnet size of /26. So Azure Bastion nodes can grow up to 50 nodes, and each virtual machine node or each node can handle up to 20 remote desktop parallel connection, and it can also handle up to 40 SSH parallel connections each machine. So if you are able to deploy 50 Bastion systems, so that times of multiplied by 20 and 40 times of 50 connections you can make, 2000 connections you can make using the Azure Bastion. But in general, people will not deploy that many number of Azure Bastion nodes. They will start with two, and if needed, if there are multiple connections and sessions that are needed, it can grow. You can also set the limit on how many number of Azure Bastion systems you want. So in general, let's take Windows operating system. It generally allows you only 2+1 connection of remote desktop. And if you go for terminal service licenses, and the terminal services license will enable you additional remote desktop connection. Without the license, you cannot access more, right? So this particular subnet is purpose created for Azure Bastion, and you should not create any other resources within that particular Azure Bastion subnet. And you need to have the public IP address for the Bastion subnet as standard. That is very important. And you also need to have that as a static assignment. And you can also have any custom port values for the Azure Bastion backend systems if you want to have one more level of hardening or security. So this is what I was explaining. So each instance in your Azure Bastion can support up to 20 concurrent RDP connection and 40 concurrent secure shell connections for your medium workload scenario. So if, for example, there are 4 different SKUs, stock keeping unit or tier or license, you can call it SKU. The SKU is not, I mean, you cannot downgrade a particular SKU if you have went for a higher version. For example, developer is the basic one, and you have basic and you have standard and also you have premium. So developer is the most cost effective and low code option that you can use for any cost effective option for development activities. And for the administration, generally we go for basic or standard or premium. But if your organization is very highly secure and you need to do auditing, and if you want to capture all the sessions as a recording, then you need to go for the premium SKU. And if you just want the Azure Bastion concurrent connections, and if you want shareable link features and so on, you can go for the standard option. So we will explore all these options in practical. And in general, on a very high level, these are some of the benefits of Azure Bastion. So RDP and SSH can be used using the same Bastion. You can use RDP and SSH for the Windows and SSH for the Linux. Using SSH, you can also take a command line connection of your Windows virtual machine, and you can also use SSH for just SSH for Linux connection. So all these traffic goes through transport layer security, and also it uses TLS 1.2 and above. So it is very secure, and the connection is very seamless. You can use any HTML based browser for accessing the backend systems. There is no public IP address that is needed for your backend systems. You need just one public IP address for your Bastion, and using that you will be able to connect to the backend, and you don't have to do anything on the NSG or no changes. It's just about creating and utilizing it. And you also don't need to manage a separate Bastion host on a VM. So you have a lot of protection against port scanning, hardening is there, and you also have the protection against zero-day exploit. And also you can protect against the brute force attack because you are not exposing the SSH and RDP. So you can have these many number of concurrent connection, and each Bastion setup can have up to 15 nodes. You have copy paste option. You don't need to make any additional changes like a, network virtual appliance, and you can also have this Azure Bastion hosted on multiple availability zone for very high availability. Okay, so we will start with the demo. There are a few more points which I will explain, and meanwhile you can just see how to create the Bastion. So there are multiple ways to do that. You can just directly go to Bastion, and then you can create it for a particular um, location region. Here I will just create it for East US, and I will call it as East US Bastion 01. And here is where you go and select what kind of tier you need for your um, SKU for your Bastion. It has 4 different options: developer, basic, standard, and premium. So you cannot downgrade once you have went for the higher version. You cannot downgrade from standard to basic or from basic to developer, but you can upgrade from basic to standard or standard to premium. So I'll create the standard SKU tier now, and then I'll show you how to upgrade it. And here is where you can go and select how many number of nodes you want for your Bastion, and you can just select as low as 2, and you can go up to 50. And you have to create a specific VNet, I mean subnet for your Azure Bastion. So this has to be named as Azure Bastion subnet. And if it is not there, you can just go and create a subnet for your Azure Bastion, and you can leave it. So by default, it will take up the public IP address, and it will take a static assignment. And also it needs a standard SKU for your Azure Bastion. And let me just go and review and create it. So here is where you can go and enable what are the different options you want. If you want to connect using IP address, and if you want to use Windows Server Active Directory based authentication, the Kerberos authentication, and if you want to have the native client support, you can also do that. And if you want to enable shareable link, you can also do that. Now, there are certain conflicts that you might see. For example, the native client support might not coexist with the session recording. I'll show you how to switch that or switch off one of the option little later. I will create the Bastion now. It says there is a limit of 3 public IP address in this particular region. Looks like I've already exceeded. Let me go and just quickly clean up the public IP address. The free tier has a particular limit, right? I'll show you where exactly you can look at the limit. I don't want this particular IP address anymore. It is not needed. You can just go and delete that. I created it for my virtual network gateway, and I will also delete this UK South virtual network gateway public IP address. That is also no more needed. And if I clean up that, then you will have very less number of I think it will reduce to 2, right? And I can able to create one more. So there are two East US public IP address, but that's fine. And even if I want to delete this firewall, I can also do that. For now, I think I have got one more which I can create. I can just go and give it a try now. I can just go back to previous screen and then come and review it. And now it should not throw any error. It should allow us to create this time. Yeah. So there was a limit, and we reached that soft limit, and that's the reason it started throwing the error. You can increase that particular limit if you are in the production environment, but here, since we are using the free tier or the free trial subscription, the limit is just 3 public IP address per region. Okay, now let the bastion get created, and we will access the bastion once it is ready. So you cannot change from a regular bastion deployment to a private only bastion deployment. So in certain environment, they don't want even the bastion to be available on the public internet through the public IP address. In such cases, you can also go for private only bastion system. So from your on premises or from the through the VPN, you can access the bastion service using the private IP address itself. And already I told you about the downgrade option, which is not available if you're going for a higher tier, but you have the option to upgrade from a lower tier to higher tier. And if you want to have end-to-end private connectivity, you can also connect using the native client instead of using the Azure portal. So that option is also there. And if your client machine is on the premises and non-Azure, you'll need to deploy an express route or VPN in order to use the IP-based connection or the private IP only connection. So that is also possible in a particular secure environment. So you can use the Bastion completely using the private IP address. See, before the Bastion solution came into picture, so generally what we used to have a jump server or a terminal server on one of the subnet, generally the hub VNet or the management subnet. And through the internet, we use the public IP address of the jump server, and we use the RDP or SSH port. So these ports are weak ports and well-known ports. Many malicious users and anonymous users try to intrude and do the sophisticated attacks. So generally, like they might get successful if they use a kind of random username and password to connect. So to avoid this, generally nowadays in many of the customer environment which needs to be secure, we use this Azure Bastion service, which gets created as a subnet, like how we created now and created the Azure Bastion. So once after we start enabling the Azure Bastion, the internet-based users, the administrators will connect to the Azure Bastion using the uh, 443 port number instead of the weak port numbers, and then it will allow us to go and connect the backend system. So that's how the things work, and it is pretty much straightforward. And Azure Bastion subnet can also be used for connecting to different services and gateway devices. So now let's see the practical of how to connect to the virtual machines using the Bastion. And this is the kind of licensing options or the tier that we have. So we call it a stock keeping unit and also known as tier. So there are many features that are available in your premium. The premium has got all the features, including the private only deployment and the session recording. So these are the very high secure options, and session recording helps you with auditing and any need where you have to record the session. And if you look at here, you can also have the option to disable the copy paste, and you can do that only in standard and premium. And you can also get the audio output of your virtual machine in all the different SKUs. And there are many different options that does not support. You can connect to Linux, and you can connect to Windows using RDP in developers queue. And in the standard SKU, you also have the option to connect to Windows VM using SSH. That's interesting, right? Command line connection to Windows Server is also supported in standard SKU and the premium SKU. And one more important thing is this shareable link is used by many customers these days, and this option is available in standard and premium. There is one more option called Kerberos authentication, Windows Active Directory based authentication. That option is available from basic and the higher tier. So Azure Bastion pricing. So you need to understand that if you go for developer, it is a free option and it is a low code, and it's a shared Bastion system. The underlying physical system, the physical infrastructure is shared across multiple customers, and you can get it for very cheaper price. And the Azure Bastion Basic, it is chargeable for 16 Indian rupees per hour. And similarly, the standard, and if you want to have additional nodes, you need to pay extra 12 Indian rupees per hour for using the Bastion. And similarly, there are data charges if you're using the Azure Bastion, and if you're sending some data outside of a region, then based on the capacity, there is a price per GB. So for example, the 100 GB data it is like 5 Indian rupees or around roughly 6 Indian rupees. And the first 5 GB is free of cost, okay, when it comes to pricing. So now let's see each of these demo one by one, and we'll also talk about shareable link, session recording, the customer ports, and all those stuff. So I'll explain these one by one, but first let's see the Azure Bastion stuff. It is getting created. So I'll show you how it looks like and where exactly you can just do this. And let me show it here in one of the existing Bastion. And if I go to Bastion, you will see many options here. You have the connect option. So you can just enter the IP address of the system which you want to connect in that particular location. See, let's say if I know the public IP, I mean private IP address, I can just go and directly copy and enter that. And there is one more option. You can also use the connect and the Bastion option here itself. So that way you don't have to enter the IP address if you're connecting it from the virtual machine list. You also have an option here to connect. So this option will directly take us to username and password, and we will be able to directly connect. So the Bastion is getting updated. There is some changes that is going on. Okay, this is for the East US, right? So I'll use the UK South Bastion. See, that's the beauty. There is a peering link, and that's the reason it is asking us to use. Are we planning to use the UK one or the East US one? I'll explain that in details shortly. I will just go and enter the credentials now. Okay, I can just open it here within the same browser console, or if I want to open it in a new tab, I can also do that. See, I'm able to, okay, let me just reconnect and just give the correct password. Maybe I might have entered the password wrongly. Let me just go one step back. Okay, I'll open it in a new tab better, so that way it looks neat and clean in a full screen. Yeah, so I'm able to connect here. So if you enable session recording, right, whatever activities that we do here, like let's say if I want to enter something or if I want to make some changes, all these stuffs will get recorded. Okay, so let's say TCP port equals 443 or whatever, right? So you can just go and search only for the IP address corresponding to this one and the TCP port corresponding to 443. So this will just show whatever the IP address entries with the 443 thing using the Wireshark. So all these things gets recorded, and you can also access this from your Azure Bastion. So let me go and show you where exactly it is. So let me close this. And if I go to my Bastion, and here under the session recording, you'll be able to see that. And okay, let me show that session recording quickly. So if I go to the session recording, you will have all the activities that has happened in the recent past, and I can just directly go and view the recording latest one, and it is getting loaded. Maybe it will show me what I have done in that. So you can see that there is a recording. And if I play that, it will tell me what I did using that particular session. So I went inside and then used the Wireshark to do some filtering and all those things. You can see that things in the session recording. So that's the beauty of session recording option. So this is available on your premium versions only. Okay, so you need to go and enable the session recording. I'll show you how the step-by-step options on how to get this enabled on your Azure Bastion, and then how to, I mean, just now we watched the session recording, right? This can be very useful when you need to do a auditing or when you need to do a root cause analysis, or when you want to do some troubleshooting, you know what was changed and how did they change it, and you can easily roll back it. So that's the beauty of recording. So these recordings are getting stored in your storage account. I'll show you how to get these configured and get the recording into this. So nowadays, there are a lot of use cases where we need to allow the end users or the contractors to connect to our system for a particular span or a particular duration, maybe only when they have activity or when they want to do some development activity or when they want to make some changes, do some installation or configure some application. We can just give them time bound access for that particular um, contractor. So we can create a shareable link within the Bastion, and we can use that particular link for accessing this virtual machine. I just have to copy the link, and I don't have to log into Azure portal. for the shareable link, it will directly ask us the credentials, username and password, and I will be able to access it directly from here. Okay, so this is how the shareable link feature works. It is a pretty much good one. Let me just go one step back and then enter the credential. Okay, just copy that. I'll close this connection. Okay, so you can also use SSH for Windows as well. Okay, so that is there since your standard SKU, and for premium also you can use the SSH option, but that will allow you to just connect on the command line. So let me show you that. So if I just go and enter it, okay, it's fine. I can just copy it, then just paste it. So this time I'll show you how to use the, okay, copy, paste. This time I'll try to show you how to use the SSH. Even for Windows also it will work. That's the interesting. It will take us to the command line console of your Windows. So this is pretty much available on your higher version of your SKU. Okay, so there is some connection, that's fine. So now let's do one thing. I can just go back here and then see what happened to my other bastion, whether it is still getting created or it's done. So for East US, let's check the status. So it is succeeded and it is available. So now I'll show you how to use this bastion to connect to the virtual machines that are there on the East US. So for example, if I want to connect to this virtual machine on the East US, I can just go and copy the private IP address and 10.0.1.4, and from within the East US bastion, I can go and select the connect option, enter the public IP address, private IP address, and I can just give the credential and get logged in. Okay, so let's see. And so this is one option. This is the option that we were trying. Okay, so let me just do one thing. Let's try if I'm able to access the virtual machine on the another region. Okay, so I have this UK South. This is completely in a different data center, London, and a different region. Let me check if I'm able to access this from my East US bastion. Okay, let's give it a try and then see what happens. Okay, so the beauty is like it is giving it a try and I'm able to log in. So how this worked, and I'm connecting it from the East US bastion, and that too, it is able to connect me to a server in UK South region, which is completely a different continent, and it is there, and then we are able to do it. So the reason is, in my virtual network on the hub VNet, I have a peering connection, inter-region peering connection. It's a global peering that I have got, and I have a connection to East US to UK South, and from UK South to East US. So that is the reason I'm able to use one bastion to connect to a completely different virtual network in a different region, which has got a global VNet peering. So one bastion can be used to connect to different locations, different regions and stuff. So if you have a peering, then it works pretty much between subscriptions, regions, and other locations. So that's how it is. And if you want to enable the session recording, what you can do is, let me try to log into the VM and then see if I have the right credentials. Okay, looks like I'm able to connect from here. Let me also check this VM, the East US one, to see if there is an issue with the password. So generally, like we connect using this native method, right? So that's something which is now taken care by the Azure Bastion. See, Azure Bastion is a kind of now getting us a replacement for your CyberArk and very high cost solution. So I'm able to log in with the credentials. Maybe let me try it again now. So from here, what I will do is I will go and enable the session recording. So in order to enable the session recording, I need to have this particular Bastion with premium SKU. So if I go to the property or the configuration, I will see what kind of SKU I have got. See, I cannot downgrade. If I just downgrade from standard to basic, it will not allow us. But then if I want to upgrade from standard to premium in order to get that session recording, the enhanced auditing, security, and monitoring, I will be able to do that from standard to premium. But only thing is, you cannot have session recording and the option here, the native client support option together. So if I'm using it from my local client, then the session cannot be recorded, right? So I need to just disable this, and then you can enable the session recording, and you can just apply the changes. And once after the session recording is updated, you will see one more link on the left that will give you the option to access the session recording. So I'll show you how to configure the session recording and utilize that. Okay, just give it a second and we will be able to do that. Okay. So it will take a couple of minutes to get this updated from the standard tier to premium tier, and it is also enabling the session recording here. And what we'll do is, like, while this is getting created, I will go and create a storage account to get this thing. I'll just go to one of the storage account in East US. I'll go and create a container, and I will call it as Azure Bastion recording. Okay, and then let me just create it with the default options. And what I have to do is I have to go and use this particular container and generate a SaaS URL. In order to generate the SaaS URL, you need to provide the permissions and stuff. So what I have to do is I just have to give the permission. I can just go and give write permission, create permission, and maybe list, or if I want to add something, I can also add it. So just provide only the relevant permission and a shorter duration for accessing this URL. So I can just generate the SaaS token, and the URL will be generated here. I can just copy the SaaS URL, and then let's try to go and get this configured. Let me refresh and see if the session recording is now available. So now I'll try and populate. Okay, I could see the session recording option is here. So inside the session recording, so you need to provide the SaaS URL of your storage account container in order to store those recording. So I'll just go and provide the SaaS URL that I have copied. So now it is updated, and I will upload the changes. It says uploading SaaS URL Bastion status. Okay, so let's wait for a couple of minutes. It looks like it is taking some time to get updated. It is still the provisioning state is updating, because I could see the session recording has come, but then the provisioning state is not still available. It should get completed. Then we will be able to make the changes. Okay, so let's wait for a couple of minutes to do that. Okay, so yeah, so if you want to use this particular Bastion, you can just go and create the shareable link here, and that way you will be able to use you can connect the virtual machines without having access to the Azure portal. Directly, you can log into the VM, and you, as a contractor, as a administrator, if you want to have just-in-time access or just enough access during the activity, you will be enabled access through that particular web link or shareable link. So hopefully this will get updated in a minute or two, so that way I can show you how to get the session recording configured and get this moving. So now these are the options that you can explore, and by default the copy and paste and even the IP based connections are allowed. And even if you want to use the native client, I can also do that. It is pretty much straightforward, and it's still updating. And let me show one option here in the UK South Bastion. And yeah, so here I can see this. Okay, let me try to go to the sessions and then see which are the current sessions that are there. If there are some connections here, I mean, someone is connected, it will show the list of connection. For example, let's say I'm just connecting to this particular system using RDP. I can come and check that there is an entry for this particular session. And if I want to terminate that session, or if I want to disconnect that session, I can just pretty much do that. Okay, let me just see if that particular session is getting loaded. Maybe let me paste it again, or let me close this and give it a refresh, and then copy this link. Yep. So I'm able to completely log in, and I will be able to see that particular session now under the session section. So if you want to just delete this connection, you can also delete this connection. So that way that particular connection gets terminated. And you can also see that how the connection has been accessed now using the shareable link. Bastion shareable link. BSL stands for Bastion shareable link. And we have used the RDP protocol, and we have used the private IP address to connect to that particular VM. And you can also go and check few more things. You can also, under the monitoring, you can also see how many connections are being made, and what is the Bastion connection status, whether it is being accessed heavily. I could see there is a connection here, and I can also see the number of sessions on the Bastion. I could see that there are some 3 connections that has happened very recently. So all the 3 connections we did it. So it's there. Okay, so you can also try connection troubleshooting. If you're not able to access it, you can just specify the source or destination of the virtual machine and then see if I'm able to successfully connect. So now let's wait for the other Bastion and then see if I'm able to successfully updated the Bastion. Now it should be succeeded. So the provisioning state should be succeeded in order to update anything here. So here, go to the session recording now, give it a refresh, and then try to add the URL which I'm copying here. So I can copy the SAS URL of the container and I can update it here, and it should show a green check. Click on upload, and once the changes are updated, so you can wait for a couple of minutes and then you can start accessing any of the servers using that particular stuff. Now, yeah, let's give it a minute and then see, give it a refresh. It's succeeded, right? So let me go to the machine and then try to access it using the Bastion. So the beauty is, like, you can access the UK machine or the the East US machine because you got peering, right? So that way you will be able to completely connect to any of the systems in both the regions. So I can use the East US Bastion. There are 2 Bastions now, but I can just use any of them. I can just give the credentials. Okay, I can just open it in a new tab if I want. So it's opening up. Yep. Okay, without valid, disable session recording on the okay, with the valid SAS URL and try. Okay, maybe whatever we have created, it does not have the right permission. So now how do we troubleshoot it, right? So we have to give the, okay, we already given the permission here, and just quickly check. Okay. So what you can do is, if I want to share the resources or if I want to store the resources here, so this is Azure Flow Log. Okay, so there is one more option that you can do. If I want to give the permission, you can just go to this cross-origin resource sharing. And here, what you can do is you can just copy the Bastion link from there. Let me go to the Bastion. And the Bastion, if I want to allow the East US Bastion to store the recording, so I can just copy the public DNS name, or I can also copy the link from the URL, but I can just do this here only. I can copy the public DNS name, and I'm just giving permission for that particular Bastion to store the content in Okay, so let me just give the link and then I can just allow to post or just get the recording from here, and then I can just store it for some time, maybe let's say some 600 or 1000. Yeah, I can just store it for some time and then save it. So now let's give it a try. Go to the container and then let's try to generate the URL again. Okay, so this one, go here, generate the SAS, and I can just give the permission to add or create the thing and then list, even to write. Okay, I can just give the details and generate the SAS URL, copy the SAS URL, go here, update it on the session, and on the Bastion under the session recording, you will be able to update the link where you have to store your session recording. So you can just add or update the SAS URL and you can enter it and then paste it. And once this is done, whatever activities you are performing, it starts getting loaded in your storage account. So if I go here under the storage account, under the container, you will start seeing the files getting populated under the sessions. See, so these are the files which we are seeing, and we are able to see the amount of file, and there is a very lengthier recording which you can access, stand 5, right? I can just go and open that one and then see what has been captured. So this is very, very useful when it comes to auditing or when it comes to rollback of any specific issues. So the .5 session is pretty lengthier. Okay, so I can see that many recording is there. Yeah, the .5 is 3 minutes. Yeah, I can just go and click on the view recording and it will fetch that recording from my session storage account, and I can see 30 seconds of recording is available, or even it's like 3 minutes of recording. I can just completely see the entire steps that we did, and I'm able to watch the entire recording. Okay, so that way we know like what a person did and roll back any specific stuff that you're done. So Azure Bastion has got a lot of new features, interesting options that you can explore. So when you get time, just practice this. And if you have some doubts, let me know in the comments. I can support you. Thank you.